Hi folks, welcome to this edition of the Handy Randy Show. We spend most of our time talking about old cars. And when I say old cars, like antiques, and like Joe Buza, he's an antique, and or me, I'm an antique as well, or classics like Joe Buza. Is that better?
That's better.
Joe Buza is the operations manager at Haasz Auto Mall. 2 locations to serve you, one of them being in Ravenna, the other recently acquired the dealership. It was Grimm.
GG Grimm.
In Dalton.
Dalton. You got it right, man.
And what we're going to do today is talk about new cars and new trucks. But there's a twist on that because, Joe, there is one constant that's been with Chrysler products for a very long time. And when I say very long time, since I think the early 50s, they incorporated the Hemi engine into their production line.
Yep, 1951 actually. The 336 Hemi came out in 1951 in some models, and went away for a little while after that and came back in the 1964, which was the 426 Hemi. And from 64, they raced a Daytona race. They won it. Daytona said that they couldn't use it anymore. They hadn't put it into production. It wasn't out there for the general public, so they couldn't call it a stock car.
Because that's what they were, stock cars back then, in the good old days.
Correct. So they made them actually sell 1,000 cars, and once they sold 1,000 cars, they could actually race again. So they did that in 1965, and then in 66, they raced the Daytona race again, and took first, second, and third place with the Hemi motor again, the 426 Hemi.
So overall, it's been a pretty good engine. And of course, with those wins, obviously it probably got the attention of all of the race teams, whether it would be like NASCAR, but also the cars that went straight as well.
Absolutely. Drag racing. Really, every manufacturer has at one point taken part of that concept and made a motor. Ford did in the 60s also. Alfa Romeo, Fiat, all the Daimler, all of them over the years. Actually, the first one was 1901, was the first Hemi, which was in a foreign car. It was in, I think, one of the Alfa Romeos.
Configuration of the cylinder head, a hemisphere.
Correct.
And that seemed to be a pretty good idea.
It increases the combustion of the motor. It helps the fuel burn better. It allowed for bigger valves. It allowed for better airflow. It allowed for 2 valves, the exhaust and the intake valve, both in the same cylinder head. You could put it in at an angle because of the dome. Allowed a little more room so you could have a bigger valve, move more air, burn fuel more efficiently. And that was the whole concept. And with the hemispherically shaped, it also allowed for the heat to stay in the motor, which also produces horsepower. But,
all good things.
All good things.
And the good news, folks, is that same engine that won Daytona, that same engine that all of the great dragway cars, whether it's been IHRA or NHRA, that's won thousands of championships, that same engine is now available in the cars and trucks that you sell today at Haasz Auto Mall.
Correct. They brought it back in 2002, I believe. They brought the Hemi back in the Ram truck, and we've had it ever since. A little different design because now it's fuel injected. They've added 2 spark plugs instead of 1 to help burn fuel better. But technology. But yes, it's still the Hemi motor.
We're going to go to a video that actually this has to do with the Ram Chargers that were the great race team that was conceived in the 60s, where basically when it came to Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth, they dominated dominated.
Absolutely did.
And this team was responsible for the inception of that engine. Let's take a look and get a real good background on pretty much everything Joe just said is in this video. You're an amazing person, Joe. Watch this.
Think of great American V8 engines. The 426 Hemi is always near the top of my list. It set the performance world on its head when it was released in the early 60s, and today it's a bona fide legend. Here's our documentary-style look at the awesome 426 Hemi.
It became obvious after the war, Second World War, that the market was exploding and it was going to be very competitive, and certainly the old line of long stroke L-head 6 and straight 6 and straight 8 engines that were Chrysler's forte simply weren't going to hack it.
The first production design became the Chrysler line Hemi head V8 engine, and that's the one that then was released for the 1951 model year.
There was not just the Chrysler original Hemi, but also a Dodge version, quite a bit smaller, and then an intermediate for the DeSoto.
Those engines all had the kind of power supremacy that Chrysler liked over the wedge head inline valve engines of other designs.
The Hemi head was an expensive engine to make, but on a mass-produced scale, not much more than the wedge. But management at Chrysler at the time felt that it was a bit too exotic, and they could make engines almost as powerful, some thought as powerful, as the Chrysler Hemi. So 1957 started seeing the window close on the Chrysler Hemi, and by 58, that was the last year of production for the Hemi engine at Chrysler for the first generation.
Well, Ramchargers was a group of drag racing enthusiasts that just naturally developed in Chrysler engineering.
And they actually worked like a research and development crew. They drag raced for the fun of it, but they actually took what they learned drag racing and brought it back to the corporation.
Major changes regarding the image of the product had to be made, and the decisions were made, and the finances were lined up to do it and so forth. We were at the ready. I mean, there was this group there that was a natural.
Chrysler was having good success in drag racing circles with its Max Wedge 413, Max Wedge 426. It was a great drag racing car, but on the circle tracks, a NASCAR circuit, the wedge engine did not do as well.
In April of '63, the decision was made, hey, let's do something significant here so that we can go be competitive in NASCAR. We knew what the A311 program could do. We knew what the Hemis had always done. Let's adapt the Hemi head to the basic big block wedge and go blow these guys away.
Well, the hemispherical chamber, as the name implies, is a portion of a sphere, and here you can see the arc shape of the sphere itself. With this, we can bring the spark plug in to the center of the chamber, which is an excellent position for the spark plug. The same shape over in this view allows us to put the valves in a position where when they open, like this inlet valve, it has excellent breathing of the air past the valve seat. And this combination of the excellent breathing of the inlet and the exhaust makes for a very high volumetric efficiency of the engine.
Daytona was very important because if in NASCAR, if someone had won Daytona, they had a successful year right there.
And the chairman of Chrysler said, all right, I want it in time for the Daytona 500 in February of '64. They had less than 12 months to produce an engine from a blank sheet of paper to a full-blown racing engine, and amazingly enough, they did it.
As it turned out, we were able to get all of our parts together for the buildup of the first engine, first prototype experimental engine, by the end of November of 1963, and the engine ran under its own power on December 6th of 1963.
Chrysler was under a real deadline to bring these engines down to Daytona, install them in cars, obviously prior to the race, but preferably several weeks before the race, so they could get their test time and develop time in for the race.
And we ran into problems with the engine on the durability side. By the end of January, we found that we were cracking cylinder bores. And when we found these cracks and realized what the solution would be to get additional castings, cylinder block castings with heavier bore walls, we were then about 3 weeks away from race day.
Workman was down at the foundry personally, tweaking everything to make it work, you know, and Bob Lechner's driving engines in the back of a pickup all night down to the beach, and all of us are, you know, it was really something.
That finish at Daytona couldn't have been better for the corporation. They let out a cheer at Chrysler Engineering when they swept 1, 2, 3 at Daytona.
It was just a wonderful feeling that all the work we had done had come to fruition in such a dramatic way.
The Hemi legend that began with the Chrysler 300 really took off with the Street Hemi in 1966 that was built upon the racing successes of the race Hemi from 64 to 65 and on.
We knew that we could not just put a race engine into production on the street. That just wouldn't work. But we were able to make a modified version of the engine that became our Street Hemi.
Well, Chrysler had to drop the Hemi in the early 70s for two primary reasons. One were the emission standards that were looming over the horizon, and further down the road, fuel economy standards. The 426 Hemi was a real gas guzzler. And by then there was another problem. That was insurance premiums. That was really socking it to them.
So there had to be almost a business decision whether or not to continue with that level of engineering work, or whether we should say, the Hemi has done its job, let's discontinue it now. We don't want it to ever get a flavor of being a mild-mannered engine. So in 1970, we said, let's stop production.
When we got the green light to go ahead and adapt the Hemi head to the big B engine, that we realized that it would be one day something revered that everybody would look back on as something very special indeed. Yeah, we knew that.
Hey, welcome back to the Junkyard Joe Show. Now, I have to tell you that he's got it all planned. He said, look, Randy, when you retire, I'm going to take over the show.
Absolutely.
I can hear your footsteps behind me as I speak.
Absolutely. Are you done yet?
Oh, man. I have to stay up on it, okay, because they're right behind me. And you, guess what? You could take over the show because you do a good enough job. You've been on enough.
Absolutely have. Yep. Been around here a long time.
Yeah, you know the format. And you know that I love cars. As a matter of fact, I've always been around cars my whole life. I've been at dealerships. I've been at the dealership when the big tractor trailer shows up with the car carriers, unload the cars and they pull them in. I can just envision right now in Dalton, Ohio, one of those trucks pulling off Route 30 onto Route 94 and offloading a whole variety of new DeSotos.
See, Randy, I need to take your show over because DeSotos are long gone, my friend. You're dating yourself.
No new DeSotos.
No new DeSotos.
Okay.
But we do have lots of tractor trailers of new cars that come in every day.
All right. So they'll be offloading this whole big trailer of Dodge trucks.
Correct. But Ram trucks.
I was testing
Ram
you on
truck.
that one.
Ram truck.
Ram trucks, and the Ram trucks have that Hemi engine in them as well.
Absolutely do. The Ram trucks is what they brought it back in 02 was the Hemi Magnum, the Magnum motor, and that was when they put the 2 spark plugs in, and they've since put it in several different vehicles. But yeah, Ram is its own entity.
Ram trucks.
Ram trucks.
I can remember the campaign, the advertising campaign, where is it a Hemi?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, how cool.
Got a Hemi?
And you know what? They're not only is it a great engine, it's very reliable, as we know, for a number of years.